right, Time Magazine's Person of the Year and the world's richest person, Elon Musk, says he hopes to start implanting brain chips in humans in 2022. Musk's Neuralink has been developing a chip since 2016 that would stimulate brain activity, he says, intended for medical use, primarily for those with spinal cord injuries and neurological disorders, to help them be able to operate things with just their mind. So here to discuss this movie-like medical advancement is filmmaker and historian Sean Stone, and also our friend, host of Watching the Hawks, Tyrell Ventura. So Sean, let me start with you. This is literally the stuff sci-fi movies are made of. Now, back in April of this year, Elon posted a video to social media of a monkey playing a video game, Pong, as we all remember growing up, with just its mind. They've been testing this on monkeys for quite some time now. What are your top line thoughts on all of this?
Well, this is not the beginning of the transhumanism, but it's certainly a major progression forward, I would say. Transhumanism being this notion of how essentially humans will not only prolong lives, but essentially transform all aspects of their physical being in the process of merging at some levels with machinery. And so the idea of this Neuralink, that it can essentially read certain impulses, right, electrical impulses from the brain, and then essentially perform a function from the thought without having to physically touch the thing to actually perform a function in the physical world. It's basically becoming more and more invasive into the body. Now, this is a fascinating thing for people. In my documentary, MetaHuman, which we did on RT, we talked about, for people with disabilities and whatnot, it's a wonderful progression, but it will not stop there. I think this will become an aspect of all aspects of our lives if we want to ultimately put the Google Glass into our eyeballs and have our smartphones essentially within our brains. I think that option will be available very soon.
Wow. Yeah, Ty, Elon says this development can help quadriplegics and others, easily operate their smartphones, participate in social media, et cetera. Do you think there will be a line of folks willing to have a chip implanted into their brain and take part in this? Essentially, it's an experiment next year. It's pending FDA approval, but this can happen as soon as the new year.
Well, I think definitely for paraplegics and tetraplegics and people like that, I think there'll definitely be that line kind of lining up to see, will this chip actually work? Will it help me be able to, communicate better with the outside world? Going to help me get, do the odds and ends that it might be capable of doing. I mean, that's the number one thing. In terms of like for the rest of us and people like, wanting to say, hey, as Sean mentioned, let me put my smartphone into my brain. I think there's a logical line that you could definitely see people willing to do that purely as a means of entertainment consumption, communication, things like that. I think we're still many years away from that, but I think that this definitely opens that door. And I think whether you agree with it or not, I think there is going to be a mass of people out there that are going to say, you know what, I'm willing to give this a shot if it can make me, quote unquote, a little bit smarter, a little bit faster, a little bit better as a human being.
Now, guys, this makes me think of like Professor X, from X-Men, where he controls everything with his thoughts. But as they say, what can go wrong? If this chip is connected through Bluetooth, doesn't that mean it can get hacked? I mean, what happens then, especially if, with the advancement of smart homes, our smartphones, everything is smart? I mean, couldn't all this be hacked, Sean?
Well, there's multiple layers to that. So there's already questions being raised. What happens to the data that basically is being generated from anyone who's using the Neuralink, for example? Essentially you have, just like with Facebook or any social media, right? There's a lot of data that's being generated about, someone's thought patterns, their behavior, the nature of how their brains work. So already there's questions about what happens to that data. Will Musk use it? I'm sure they'll use it at some level for generating new technologies. But my other concern is with Bluetooth in general. We know EMFs are toxic, and it's something that hasn't really been talked about by the big tech controlled narrative about how much radiation we're being exposed to on a daily basis. When we were kids, we knew, don't put the cell phone to your head, it can cause cancers. And over time, it seems that we've seen studies showing this, but again, for the most part, FCC and others have ignored the dangers of EMF toxicity. Now you're actually chipping it into, putting it into your brain and who knows how toxic and how long that's going to essentially, how that can affect you in long-term, issues.
Now, Ty, Sean brought up a good point there. Big tech, we know that Facebook, or I guess we have to call them Meta now, Mark Zuckerberg has talked about inventing the metaverse and having everything move there. I mean, is this what it's looking like for everybody then? Perhaps not just quadriplegics, that we're all going to exist in this metaverse just using our minds?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I've also seen interesting, conversations brought up that maybe this is the future of space travel, that if eventually we get to a point where we can kind of download someone's conscious into a machine, that's actually going to be easier to travel them through space than bringing the physical body or keeping the physical body in stasis. I mean, all of this is very fascinating and amazing things to think about or even see as it's coming to fruition with what Musk and them are doing. But ultimately, I think it begs the question, whether it's metaverse or Neuralink or all of these things, is the biggest question that we can possibly ask is, while yes, it's good for paraplegics, it's good for on a medical side of things or for helping people on that side of things, but the big question is, just because we can do something, does that mean we should do something? Are we at an age where we're going to be responsible enough with the technology and with the power and with the discovery that we're now making? I mean, because I mean, that's the same question I wish we would have asked back before we invented the nuclear weapon and the nuclear bomb and split the atom that way, is, just because we can do something, should we do something? Have we advanced enough in our ability to handle the technology and ability to use it responsibly? That is the big question we need to ask as we push forward into these truly groundbreaking and remarkable moments in time.
I mean, fair enough, Ty. Let me throw this at you, Tyrell. Elon Musk isn't the only one with this ambition. Another company has actually already beat him to the punch, scoring an FDA approval for human trials starting July of 2022. They're called Synchron. Now, forget the space race. Is this the start of a new brain race?
Hey, there is money in medicine and there is money in technology, so when you can overlap the two, ooh, you got cash flows for days. I mean, Elon Musk, I think, raised some $203 million in a year just for what he was doing. So no, it doesn't surprise me that other companies are jumping in on this because, again, it's that brave new world of the combining of technology and what technology can do for us inside our own bodies. But again, I ask that big, most important of questions is beyond the medical necessity of it, beyond saying, hey, we might be able to make someone walk again with robotic legs, or if somebody's truly if somebody's completely paraplegic, they can use their mind to get around the house, to do things around the house. Those are great things. But in terms of for the rest of us, we have to start, really asking those hard questions, and I hope at some point we do.
Yeah, Sean, I'll give you the last word on this. I mean, I'm sure Congress is way behind in putting parameters around this.
Well, exactly. I mean, the point is that we know hypothetically where this wants to go. This wants to ultimately, as Tyrell said, be able to merge some level of consciousness. And again, MetaHuman, the documentary we did on RT, begs this question. We don't understand human consciousness yet. It's one thing to say, my neurons firing help me to move my hand, right? But what actually inspires the thought in my mind? That comes from somewhere else. And this is what's really, to me, interesting in this upcoming conflict here between science and philosophy and what it is to be human, where it's like, we're not just mechanistic beings. There is something beyond that gives us the impulse to have spirit and life. And I think this is really what the next battleground is going to look like in the coming decades, is that science tries to make everything mechanized and materialistic. It's not going to figure out where spirit actually comes from.
Yeah, actually, all great points from both of you. It'd be interesting to see what Congress has to say, given that they can't even get around Section 230 for Facebook right now. Now this, wait for it, guys. Hang on to your hats. We'll leave that there. Tyrell Ventura and Sean Stone, thank you both.